For decades, amidst the storms of scandals, criticism, and towering expectations, King Charles has learned to hold his ground with familiar composure. He weathered the turbulence of his marriage to Princess Diana, faced backlash following his wedding to Camilla, and even ascended the throne at a time when not everyone welcomed him. But this time, it's unlike any challenge before. An unexpected announcement from Prince William and Kate Middleton, the most beloved heirs of the moment, has changed everything. Not because of the specific content of their message, but because its reverberations have shaken the very foundations of the monarchy. Headlines erupted like a media storm, and within the palace it's said that King Charles fell silent for a moment too long, not the silence of calm, but of a man confronting the risk of losing his position while still in power. A heavy question hangs in the air. Is he still the ultimate symbol of the United Kingdom, or merely a temporary bridge ushering William toward the throne? In the ancient halls of the royal family, the shadow of an unprecedented shift grows ever clearer, and no one knows for certain what will happen next. Tension within the royal family, King Charles has long been a symbol of composure, a man who keeps his emotions hidden behind a royal mask forged over decades. But lately, something has felt different. A vague, elusive shift, hard to name yet enough to make keen observers hold their breath. It's not in the words he speaks, but in the unusual silences. It's not in any specific action, but in what he deliberately avoids doing. And at the heart of it all is Kate Middleton. The tension didn't explode like a bomb. It crept in, building slowly, taking root through a series of small, seemingly harmless signs. But for those who closely follow the royals, these were question marks impossible to ignore. It began at the Commonwealth Day service, a grand royal event where every step, every nod is meticulously calculated. King Charles greeted Prince William with warmth, a rare, almost staged moment of affection meant to send a message. But when he turned to Kate, the atmosphere shifted. No embrace, no tender glance, not even a hint of familiarity. Just a standard, polite smile, so courteous it felt cold. To an outsider, it might have been a trivial detail, but for Kate, the Princess of Wales, a woman millions expect to become their future queen, that distance said far too much. Then came International Women's Day, an occasion for the royal family to honor its most notable women. The list was announced with pomp and circumstance. Queen Elizabeth, Queen Camilla, Princess Anne, the Duchess of Edinburgh. But Kate Middleton's name was nowhere to be found. No photo, no line of tribute. Social media erupted instantly. "Where's Kate?" one user asked. "Has she been erased from the royal family?" another quipped. In a world where every detail is tightly controlled, that absence couldn't be accidental. It wasn't just curious, it was shocking. The woman seen as the brightest face of Britain's modern monarchy now seemed sidelined, without a word of explanation. The palace stayed silent, as it always does, but that very silence fueled suspicion. People began to wonder, was this a media oversight, or a subtle message delivered not through words, but through absence, meant to be deciphered by those sharp enough to see? Since officially stepping into the role of Princess of Wales, Kate Middleton has been more than just the poised wife beside Prince William. She has risen as a symbol of calm, strength, and dignity, an image that has not only won public affection, but earned their trust. Yet in the world of monarchy, or monarchy, where power rests not just on the throne, but on perception, that trust can become a weapon, both sharp and dangerous. The clearest proof? Camilla. Despite the years, despite her official title as queen, the British public has never fully embraced her. Diana's shadow looms too large, her memory too vivid. Then came Kate, graceful, discreet, swiftly claiming the role once held by Princess Diana, not just in title, but in the hearts of millions. Comparisons were inevitable. Some even whispered that Kate was completing the mission Diana left unfinished. In recent months, William and Kate's image has surged, becoming the face of a new kind of monarchy, younger, more relatable, more modern. Surveys consistently show them outranking King Charles and Queen Camilla in public affection. To many, William and Kate aren't just the future, they're the present, but that's the crux of the issue. The British monarchy survives on a fragile, intricate balance of power. Each member is a cog in a vast machine, functioning smoothly only when no one strays from their orbit. But what happens when one cog begins to spin brighter, drawing all eyes to itself? Kate's cancer diagnosis, a revelation that silenced the nation, only sharpened the divide between her and the rest of the royal family. When the news broke, King Charles quickly issued a statement of support, calling her his beloved daughter-in-law. He too was battling a similar illness, and Kate, with her signature calm, responded with a message of gratitude toward her father-in-law. It should have been a moment of royal unity, but what unfolded was an undeniable truth. Every heart tilted toward Kate. The affection, the empathy, the wave of support flowed in one direction. In that moment, she wasn't just the Princess of Wales. She was the soul of the British royal family. And if history has taught us anything, it's this: the monarchy is never at ease with a soul loved more than the king. Perhaps it's all coincidence. Perhaps the lukewarm handshake, the inexplicable absence from the Women's Day tribute, and the chilly air between Kate and King Charles are simply products of chance. But within the royal family, where every word is weighed, every glance placed with purpose, every statement vetted and revised, nothing is truly random. Every action has intent. Every silence carries a hidden message. That's why this quiet power play couldn't be ignored. Both Kate and William seem to have realized this is the moment to reassert their place, not just in the public's heart, but in the monarchy's power structure. And they're doing it step by step. The unexpected confrontation, that moment had been brewing for a while. It didn't arrive with fanfare or explosion. Rather, it built slowly, silently, like a storm gathering on the horizon. Then, when Prince William and Kate Middleton stepped before the cameras, it became clear. This was no ordinary royal duty. This time was different. Their eyes were stern, their words chosen with precision. Something had shifted, not just the simmering tension since Queen Elizabeth's passing. What was once controlled, concealed, was now spilling into the open. A cold handshake, a forgotten tribute, and the way King Charles looked at Kate, or rather avoided her, could no longer be excused as coincidence. The public had noticed. The whispers grew louder, and William had stayed silent, until now. The confrontation wasn't loud, with no shouting or accusations. But those present knew something real, something tangible had just happened. It started with a glance, just a fleeting moment in William's eyes as his father once again overlooked Kate's presence at an official gathering. No greeting, no perfunctory nod. Then William turned to his wife, placing his hand on hers, lightly but firmly. No one heard what he said, but the room seemed to understand. He saw it all, and he wouldn't let it pass as if it never happened. What followed stayed true to royal style, discreet, composed, but taut as a bowstring. A few quiet words were exchanged between father and son, unheard by outsiders, yet heavy enough for everyone to feel their weight. Charles brushed off his son's discontent with the same indifference he'd shown Kate. But then, just when he thought the matter was settled, William and Kate stepped forward. Their message was brief, startlingly so, but its impact echoed to the thickest walls of Buckingham Palace. Those closest to the royal family understood instantly what had occurred. William and Kate weren't just reaffirming their roles within the monarchy. They were laying the groundwork for its future, on their terms. For the first time, Charles felt the tremor beneath his throne. The irony was too stark to ignore. For years, Charles had lived under the immense shadow of his mother, a queen so powerful she kept him at the throne's edge. Now history seemed to repeat itself, but this time it was the next generation holding him back. The monarchy was changing, and ironically the man in power was no longer the one shaping its future. Beneath it all lay another layer, deeper, more discreet, but the source of these quiet shifts all along. It began the day Queen Elizabeth's will was revealed. That day was strange, somber, and tense. The family gathered at Buckingham Palace in a breathless atmosphere of anticipation. But the first surprise came when it wasn't Charles, but Prince Andrew, who stood to read the will. All eyes turned to him, and Charles, sitting silently, hands clenched in his lap, couldn't hide his strain. Then came the real shock. The Queen's will defied tradition. Valuable estates, including Sandringham and Balmoral, were divided among various family members. Even Kate Middleton was named directly, receiving the Vladimir tiara, a precious symbol tied to royal beauty and power across generations. It wasn't just jewelry, it was a sign of recognition. In Queen Elizabeth's eyes, Kate wasn't merely the wife of an heir. She was a pillar, an indispensable part of the modern monarchy. Charles didn't react. He maintained his composed demeanor, smiled, as he'd done for decades under his mother's shadow. But those who knew him saw the effort in every movement. This wasn't the seamless transition he'd imagined. And now, months later, William and Kate were forging their own path, not against him, but alongside him, especially with their focus on Prince George, the one who would carry forward the mission their generation had left incomplete. Charles could no longer simply wield his kingly power to impose his will. William was no ordinary prince. He was the heir, the symbol of the future. Kate was never an ordinary princess. She was the most beloved figure, the future queen in whom the public placed their trust. And Charles, though king, felt like a placeholder, a temporary ruler in the people's hearts. He'd always known his reign wouldn't be as long as his mother's, but what he hadn't expected was how swiftly his influence might fade. As he stood there watching his son and daughter-in-law assert their path, Charles felt something he'd tried to avoid his whole life. Trembling, deep, undeniable. And when they spoke, not just Charles, but the entire monarchy shook. Protecting Prince George, Prince William, and Kate Middleton didn't care about the murmurs, the half-smiles, the probing glances, or the empty praise. They'd long learned to step past it all, knowing that one day when they sat on the throne together, those things would fade into faint echoes of the past. But there was one thing they would never compromise on, a line they'd never retreat from: their children, especially Prince George. The boy, second in line to the throne, has lived under the heavy shadow of royal destiny since he was small. King Charles's coronation became undeniable proof. While many marveled at the image of the boy standing solemnly beside his grandfather like a grown man, others froze, for in that gaze they saw the past returning. They saw another boy silently walking behind his mother's coffin under the world's eyes, forced to bear loss before he could even grasp what had been taken from him. That boy was William, and now history threatened to repeat itself with his son. The statement that followed wasn't just an assertion, it was a clear warning. William and Kate didn't need to imagine the toll of royal life. They'd lived it. They'd been children, swallowed by ritual and tradition, trading their youth for titles and roles. Now, with George, they were determined it wouldn't happen again. Perhaps that resolute stance was what chilled the relationship between Kate Middleton and King Charles more than ever. Some speculated Charles thought Kate was influencing William, that she was the one making his son defiant. But the truth was, William spoke those words with unshakable resolve. He needed no prompting. He knew better than anyone the cost of being raised as a symbol rather than a person. They refused to let Prince George be molded by an outdated framework, one that had once constrained their own lives. His place in the monarchy was inevitable, but how he stepped into that role would be decided by them, his parents, not by rules that had trapped generations in gilded cages mistaken for thrones. People had always assumed George's fate was fixed, that he'd grow up within a rigid framework, trained from his first steps, taught to rule before he could be a child, just as Charles had been, just as William had been. But now a new message rang out, shaking expectations once thought unshakable. It's over. That was the declaration William and Kate chose. No ambiguity, no half measures. From now on, any involvement of George in official events would require their permission. No one, not even the king, had the right to decide for them. They didn't care about titles. They didn't care that he was the head of the monarchy. On this, they wouldn't yield. If Charles tried to cross that line, he'd face consequences, not just within the family, but to the stability of the throne he occupied. King Charles didn't rise or argue. Outwardly, he maintained his usual calm, but the perceptive noticed his hand tightened slightly on the armrest, his breathing adjusted with effort. Because he knew this wasn't just about George, it was about power. And for the first time in his brief reign, he felt it slipping away. For years, Charles had fought to assert himself, to have a real voice in a royal family that kept him in the wings. When he finally claimed the throne, he thought he could begin a reign on his terms. But now his son was painting a different picture, one with no room for the old rules Charles once believed were the foundation of it all. Charles took a deep breath. His hands still trembled, but he couldn't let anyone see. Not here, not with so many eyes watching. But behind closed doors, he understood what had just happened. His son, the heir to the throne, had made his first declaration for a future he no longer controlled. And with that uncompromising clarity, William wasn't just protecting George. He was reshaping the monarchy itself. In that moment, Charles realized a new chapter was opening, one he wasn't writing. The bigger implications. King Charles has endured decades of trials within the monarchy, his personal struggles with the institution, the fallout of his marriage to Princess Diana, and the endless battle to define his reign under his mother's shadow. But this is different. It's about the future of the throne. Kate Middleton's absence from public life sparked speculation, with whispers about her health growing louder each day. When she finally revealed her cancer diagnosis, the news stunned the nation. The princess, known for her unshakable calm, was facing one of the greatest battles of her life. Yet even as she underwent treatment, the weight of royal duty never truly lifted. The monarchy is in a fragile state, especially with King Charles battling illness himself. While he continues to fulfill his responsibilities, the question lingers: how much longer can he sustain this role? With both the king and the future queen facing health challenges, the burden of the crown falls ever heavier on William's shoulders. Perhaps that's why the statement about Prince George came now. Perhaps it's not just about shielding their son from royal pressures, but ensuring the monarchy evolves. William and Kate have seen firsthand how rigid tradition can be, how it can break those unprepared for its demands. The last thing they want is for their son to be trapped in the same cycle. But their stance has raised concerns. If George's role in the monarchy is redefined, what does that mean for the institution as a whole? Behind palace doors, discussions are underway. Some royal advisors believe the statement is necessary, a modern approach to keep the monarchy relevant in a changing world. Others see it as dangerous, a move that could weaken the very structure that has sustained it for centuries. Then there's the matter of Kate's relationship with King Charles. The public once believed Charles and his daughter-in-law shared a close bond, but recent events have cast doubt. Some dismiss it as royal protocol, others aren't so sure. King Charles spent years preparing for this reign, believing that once he took the throne, he'd finally shape the monarchy in his image. But with William and Kate's growing presence and their clear intent to do things differently, his vision is no longer the only one that matters. The future of the crown isn't just about him anymore. A king of the past might have raged, punished, excluded, or dismissed any appeal. But Charles knows that a tantrum would only make him appear weaker in the eyes of the British public. Opinion isn't on his side, never has been, not with picture-perfect Kate Middleton on the other. He'll have to show grace if he wants to live his final years as king with any dignity. The implication is clear. Though the rightful king, the man on the throne, his reign is already over. Charles III is done. This isn't the time to fight back. This is the time for Charles to smile and preserve his dignity. A king or a placeholder? The king has spent his entire life preparing for the throne, but no ritual, no lesson could equip him for the storms arising from within. Not from enemies, not from the public, but from history, from the weight of tradition, and now from the crumbling of foundations he once thought were the strongest. Charles's mind is a tangle, racing between memories and reality, searching for clarity amid a murky tempest. Should he stand firm and resist the rising waves, or bow silently to fate's unexpected turn? The crown has never been a reward. It's been a sentence handed down since the moment he was born. When Charles first cried, royal cannons thundered across England. His future was set before he could speak. Unlike other children, free to dream, stumble, and carve their own paths, Charles's life was etched in cold stone from the cradle. At 3 years old, he became heir to the throne when his mother, Queen Elizabeth II, was crowned. That role came not from choice, but from duty. And that duty severed him from an ordinary child's life, locking him in a world of ceremony he never truly belonged to. Charles's childhood, seen from the outside, was a fairy tale. But within those palace walls was a lonely boy, growing up quietly behind closed doors. His mother, the legendary queen, was always distant, bound by her reign. His father, Prince Philip, was stern to the point of coldness. No warm hugs, no midnight comforts. And Charles, though young, soon learned loneliness wasn't unusual. It was part of his existence. Then the press entered his life, uninvited. From childhood, every glance, every frown was scrutinized. Every move was analyzed, judged. In a rare moment of candor, he admitted he hated being a performing monkey. But there was no escape. He was expected to smile, wave, be the perfect prince the public demanded, even if inside he was a fractured man. Love, marriage, mistakes, pain, all were laid bare, turned into fodder for the media. Amid the storm of controversy, Charles waited, quietly, steadfastly. 7 decades passed, and finally his moment arrived. Queen Elizabeth's death thrust him onto the throne, a long-awaited moment, yet also a step into a realm he wasn't truly ready for. The monarchy he inherited was no longer what it once was. It had been shaped by a woman deeply revered, a symbol of stability. Him? He never commanded that full affection from the public. He wasn't unshakable. He was a man teetering on the fragile line between expectation and disappointment. Just 2 years into his reign, the cracks in his rule are widening. He knew there'd be challenges. He'd braced for criticism, for the fight to modernize the monarchy. But he hadn't anticipated this. His own son and daughter-in-law becoming the epicenter of a media storm that could rattle the institution itself. Prince William's firm statement, Kate Middleton's illness, the ceaseless whispers about the throne's future. These aren't the battles Charles envisioned, but now he has no choice but to face them. And then there's an unspoken truth everyone sees. William and Kate have long outshone him in the public's eyes. They represent a new chapter, bright, approachable, modern. Meanwhile, he carries the long shadow of the past, of scandals, of an era grown obsolete. His reign, though just beginning, already feels like a transition, not the dawn of a new age. Every step William takes, every time he stands beside Kate, strong and steady despite crisis, it all makes Charles wonder, is he being eclipsed by his own son within his own reign? The past echoes in his mind, the isolation, the rigid expectations, the sense he was always a piece that didn't fit the royal puzzle. He'd struggled to match the mold, and now, as king, he still isn't sure he ever has. Is he just a placeholder holding the crown for the next in line? A king not to rule, but to pass the torch? History murmurs in his ear of monarchs who sat on the throne, facing crises, facing change. Some fought to cling to power. Others stepped back, yielding to the era's tide. Charles has spent his life preparing for this role, but has he ever truly paused to ask, what kind of king does he want to be? Outside Buckingham Palace, rain begins to fall. Quiet drops like time's soft sigh. Inside, Charles sits alone, lost in thought. The storm out there isn't just weather. It's a perfect mirror of what rages within him. The world watches. They wait to see what he'll do next. Will he rise to assert his reign, or accept that his rule isn't the pinnacle, but a bridge to a future he no longer grasps? Only time and history can answer.